I'm going to follow up on Senator Rich's point and reference a resolution that Senator Kaine and I filed today that supports your efforts for an international tribunal, but takes a different approach to that. And I want to go through that with you, if I might. There's no question about Russia's crime of aggressions, no question about their committing crimes against humanity and genocide. We've had hearings in this committee that have established that. We've had hearings in the U.S. Helsinki Commission that has established the fact that all the conditions for genocide have been committed by Russia. And yes, I strongly support our efforts to help the ICC. I strongly support our efforts to help the Ukrainian prosecutor in any way that we can. But these are crimes against humanity, and they really do need an international tribunal, as you have acknowledged. The problem with the approach that you're taking within the Ukrainian model is that you're using the Ukrainian system, and it raises the question of the perceived impartiality. I don't know how you overcome that with the method that you are pursuing. You also will have legal immunity claims because the entity that has committed or the individuals who have committed these crimes are not going to be party to this. So to me, there's a very simple approach. Establish it under the United Nations. That's the international body that is responsible ultimately for international tribunals. It's not only would bring appropriate attention to these atrocities, but gives us a pathway to accountability and gives us the greatest hope that it will deter future atrocities. So tell me why we're not going through the entity that would remove any question of perceived impartiality and any question of immunity.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Senator. A couple of responses. Number one, I think there are serious concerns moving forward under the General Assembly on the legal front, but also on the practical front. So starting with the legal front, the body within the United Nations system that has executive power is the Security Council. Of course, it's completely paralyzed at this matter because Russia has the privilege of the veto. And
I agree that normally it's the Security Council, but the General Assembly has the ultimate power in the United Nations.
The General Assembly, however, under the charter system can only make recommendations. It can't take coercive action. So it cannot compel states to act, nor can it compel states to cooperate with anything. So the legal question is, could the General Assembly create a court that could exercise compulsion against an individual, hold an individual,
don't you think
restrict
that's
their liberty?
They have a stronger claim than one state establishing an international tribunal under their law?
Well, it would be an internationalized tribunal, so ultimately
but
the
font... You're using the Ukrainian system there. This is international. I think you run into a comparable, if not more severe, challenge to the legitimacy of the body, of the entities that would be coming before the tribunal.
I mean, as my civil procedure professor used to always say, jurisdiction is power. And so the font of power with this Ukrainian model is the Ukrainian national system, which has plenary jurisdiction over crimes committed on Ukrainian territory. The General Assembly doesn't necessarily, it's not clear, this would be breaking some serious new ground, to try and exercise coercive jurisdiction over an unwilling defendant, and then to subject that defendant to limitations on their liberty if that person was ultimately convicted. So that's the legal concern. But I do want to talk about the practical concern, which is, speaking to our diplomats in New York, there is some serious concern about whether we have the votes within the General Assembly to create a body of this nature. So if you look at the voting patterns, what we see is general resolutions that are calling for justice, condemning Russia's actions, et cetera, garner in the range of 140 votes. The minute that the General Assembly is asked to do something, that drops considerably. So even just blessing the creation of a register of damage got only 90-something votes. Kicking Russia off the Human Rights Council garnered only 93 votes. And there's serious concern that some of the kind of states that don't want to get caught in the revival of Cold War dynamics, they don't want to be on record here voting for something, they would abstain. And so you would lose the legitimacy that comes from
I understand. We don't go down
vote.
that path unless we have the votes. I recognize that. But I would think that we know how to engage other countries. It cannot be a sole U.S. effort. The United States cannot sit on the sidelines, as you pointed out. It's got to be a collective action. You've got to nurture this before you take it to a vote. But it seems to me that the legitimacy here and the final attention given to accountability is worth the consideration. And I would just urge you I'm glad to see that you're looking for an international tribunal. I think you need one. I just don't know how you can remove the perceived challenges when you're using a one-country legal system for an international tribunal. To me, as an attorney, that seems like it's problematic for the type of attention you're trying to get in international legitimacy.
There are legal questions as to whether, and I want to just address your two prior questions about immunity and about impartiality as well, and that's a nice segue to that. There are some questions about whether any tribunal created under the General Assembly or within the Ukrainian system could overcome the head of state immunity of members of the so-called Troika. That would, again, be an issue of first impression, really, here. So in this case, the assumption is that we would not have custody over President Putin or other members of the Troika unless they were no longer in those positions, in which case either an internationalized Ukrainian court or an international body would be free to assert jurisdiction because head of state immunity dissipates when the person is no longer in that position. On the impartiality question, I think the response to that is the international community needs to step up and invest in this process within Ukrainian courts. And that ensures that it does not appear to be some version of victim's justice, that this is in fact scrupulously fair, that every defendant is entitled to the full due process protections, and that only those cases that are based upon the evidence and that merit conviction are actually brought to justice. So
I would just point out, I think you have the same problems of getting international cooperation for international tribunal under the Ukrainian as you would under General Assembly, perhaps even more. Senator Ricketts.
Great. Thank